modern laws to safeguard old culture and heritage. Often you would have come across articles in newspaper that Taj Mahal is facing a problem because of air pollution. You could have come across articles that there are encroachment by the commercial agents near a ancient heritage site. So, taking cognizance of everything that is happening today, and long back, our founders, even before independence, India was established, the British also took conscious effort to not only recover, to revive the India's knowledge of ancient culture, but also to preserve it. And this chapter is an effort to help you understand the efforts being made. It was made, what was being made in the past, and what has been going on in the present, so that you can also incorporate these elements in your answers. We also feel that in light of the controversies associated with some of the institutions which have been in news, we expect that our question or a two can also be asked in the prelims examination. So first we'll have to understand that it is the duty of whom? Is it only the state or the citizen or both who are duty bound? Is there any reference of such duty or such obligation on the part of the state and on the part of citizens in our Indian constitution to make efforts for promotion of our culture? So let us start by seeing these laws, these constitutional provisions, and the idea behind enactment of many of these historic laws. So if we talk about constitutional provisions, we find that effort have been made by the constitutional framers to provide for preservation of the culture, especially those of minority communities. We know that in the recent times, these Lingayats had been demanding for religious minority status. And why they had been demanding? Because if they get a religious minority status, then they will enjoy a number of fundamental freedom with respect to propagation, with respect to practicing of religion, which is given to the religious minorities. We know that in the DPSP, the state is enjoined under Article 49 to take steps for the preservation of cultural forms, institutions. And now, moving on towards citizens, we have that as fundamental duty. It is not only the state but us also who are obligated to do our bit part towards the preservation of these monuments, of these forms of culture. So if we talk about Article 29, Article 29 talks about the protection of interests of the minorities, and here it also alludes to the cultural practices of these minorities. We know that under the fundamental rights, the minorities are also encouraged to establish educational institutions while keeping in line with the broad curriculum laid by the national educational agencies. So here a distinct effort is made because it is at times felt that in absence of adequate patronage or awareness, the minority culture might die down. And it is not only about religious minorities. Otherwise also we see that there are distinct institutions such as TriFed under the Ministry of Tribal Affairs, which takes and which has been making distinct efforts towards the protection, preservation, and also the promotion of tribal cultural products. So tribal culture, we have TriFed. In the rural areas, we have NABARD, which gives loans to the local agencies so as to promote folk culture. So we have, apart from the fundamental right of Article 29, we have other agencies also which are making their own conscious efforts towards the protection, preservation, and the promotion of these cultures. If we talk about the DPSP Article 49, which talks about the protection of monuments, places, and objects of national value, then now the obligation falls on the state. So we find that this DPSP falls under the category of state obligation. Intellectual DPSP, so here it is talking about that the state should endeavor to protect these places of national importance from spoilage, disfigurement, destruction, removal, disposal, and export. So in light or taking cue from Article 49, all the construction activity near Taj Mahal was stopped following a Supreme Court order few years back. We see that the Judiciary often takes recourse to the Article 49 to help the executive to preserve encroachment and disfigurement or destruction of these ancient artifacts and even monuments. And not only on such large scale, it is not only about the giant monuments, but even on smaller scale, we find that even at the level of a statue, the Indian government, the Ministry of Culture, all they are endeavoring towards the recovery of those stolen artifacts which have in most of the cases smuggled to outside countries. Last year, a news was pouring in that the Natesha idol belonging to the Pratihara period was returned following the initiative, the efforts being made by certain Indian artifact connoisseurs under the India Pride project. So we see that the government of India and its various agencies are also trying to recover many of such valuable artifacts. One of the things that we have been unsuccessful and which is often in news is the Kohinoor diamond. Kohinoor diamond, which was taken by the British following its capture of Red Fort, is lying in the London Museum. So efforts are being made, and we know that even a textbook has been written regarding. So we are still awaiting the day when Kohinoor would be brought back to India. And then there is the DPSP Article 51A, which speaks about the obligation of every citizen of India as his or her own fundamental duty to contribute towards valuing and preserving the rich heritage of our composite culture. So it is not only about tangible thing that we don't have to destroy a monument, it is also about paying respect. So this has to be read in a broader way. It is about paying respect to the different cultures. So often we find that people ignore or they denigrate various folk culture, minority culture, majoritarianism. We find ignorance of the minority culture. So definitely this goes against the ethos of the fundamental duty under Article 51A subsection F. Now we have statutory provisions. When we talk about statutory provisions, means you are liable to be penalized when you act in contravention to these provisions. So that what means is that till now, whatever we have discussed was more of voluntary. Now it has been the fundamental duty, Article 49, all this has been put into the form of specific laws. Laws such as the Indian Treasure Trove Act 1878, during the time of Lord Curzon, who was a connoisseur of art and culture. So he had also made distinct efforts towards the preservation of ancient monuments. 1947, after independence, antiquities export control so as to prevent the smuggling of these rich antiquities which are in huge demand overseas market. And then Delivery of Books, Public Libraries Act 1954. So even if you don't remember all these acts, we expect you to remember the Antiquities Export Control Act, Ancient Monument Preservation Act 1904. These two are very important. So speaking of more laws, we had the Ancient and Historical Monuments, Archaeological Sites and Remains Act 1951, which has been revised as the Ancient Monument, Archaeological Sites and Remains Act 1958. Antiquities and Treasures Act 1972 and the Public Records Act 1993. Besides these laws, a number of institutions have been established and they function under the overall supervision of the Ministry of Culture, and we find that these institutions which have been established by the Government of India are responsible for preservation, conservation and propagation of Indian culture. And not only these are statutory bodies, not only these are government bodies, but various non-government organizations also which are specialized in the preservation of Indian culture. So if we talk about organizations, the first foremost most important organization which was the brainchild of Alexander Cunningham is the Archaeological Survey of India. So we have come across and we will come across many of the findings of Archaeological Survey of India, the apex body to carry out excavations unearthing the valuable remains of India's past. So if we talk about Archaeological Survey of India, Archaeological Survey of India founded in 1861 with its founder Alexander Cunningham becoming the first Director General, DG. And this later developed after independence as an agency, a department of the Ministry of Culture with the motto to uncover the glory of the past. We have come across the study of various mounds because if anything is left undisturbed for a long time, it is covered with a heap of mound. So these mounds have been excavated. We know the story of the Harappan civilization beginning in 1920s. The discovery 1921, the discovery of Harappa as the first site, and the rest is history. We know that there are challenges associated with the excavation of these mounds. We also have been hearing of the recent discovery in Sanoli in Uttar Pradesh. So in the last 3-4 years. So Archaeological Survey of India is the most popular and the most active of these organizations. If we talk about the functions of Archaeological Survey of India, its primary purpose is to carry out archaeological exploration. Now, archaeology is a branch of science. Archaeology is a branch of science associated with exploration, excavation, and the study. The idea is not to sell it or to derive any material pleasure out of these artifacts in antiquities, but the sole purpose is to study so as to provide the basis for historical research. So Archaeological Survey of India's findings and evidences form a very important corpus of historical study. So it also keeps developing epigraphical research. Now epigraphy is the study of inscriptions. So it also focuses upon the study of various inscriptions and chiefly among them the evolution and discovery of various scripts. It sets up and reorganizes site museums. So near these archaeological sites, we know that till now we have been unable to read, to decode the script of the IBC times. The Archaeological Survey of India is endeavoring to further to develop new techniques of reading these inscriptions. It is concerned with preservation, conservation, and the environmental development of centrally protected monuments and sites, including the UNESCO World Heritage Sites and Antiquities. It also takes endeavor to promote the tourism of these, to promote the eco-friendly, eco-sustainable tourism of these important sites, to promote the culture and also to add educational value wherever possible to these important sites. So under the provision of the Act 1958, it administers more than 3650 ancient monuments, sites and remains of national importance. So it is also concerned with the maintenance of these ancient monuments. They can vary from temples, mosques, churches, tombs, palaces, forts, stepwells, rock-cut caves and even pillars as well. So we find that all types of monuments are preserved by the Archaeological Survey of India. And it also maintains ancient mounds. Mounds are the remains of the ancient habitations or sites and other similar sites which contains remains of habitation. It regulates the Antiquities and Art Treasure Act. That is, it prevents the sale, the smuggling, the pilferage of these, and wherever possible, it regulates also outside the country. If we talk about the administrative organization of the Archaeological Survey of India, it is headed by a Director General who is assisted by Assistant Director General with 2 Joint Director Generals and a number of directors. It is divided into a number of departments which are known as circles headed by a Superintendent Archaeologists. And each of the circles are divided into sub-circles. So we have a hierarchical department and it also administers 3 mini centers at Delhi, Leh and Hampi. If we talk about the directors or the supreme of the ASI administration, its founder Alexander Cunningham was the Surveyor General, the Director General between 1861-65. And we find that the character of Archaeological Survey Director General is so popular that it has also been portrayed in a number of popular works such as the Sunil Gangopadhyay's famed series, that is Kaka Babu series, which is about Kaka Babu, who is an ex-director of Archaeological Survey. We find that the present director is V. Vidyavathi. Now, besides the Archaeological Survey of India at the central level, we have a number of state government archaeological departments. So, they carry out and they carry out the archaeological work besides assisting the ASI. So, we find that at the state level, the conservation of monuments is carried out by these state designated archaeological departments. And the genesis of these state archaeological departments go back to the princely states before independence. So when these states were annexed to India after independence, the individual archaeological departments were not integrated and they were given their considerable autonomy. So they were given their considerable autonomy and allowed to function as independent bodies. Only that they coordinate. So they coordinate. It is not that there is a hierarchy from center to state level, but they coordinate with the ASI. So we have a number of important departments in Odisha, in Andhra Pradesh, Department of Archaeology and Museum. We have Karnataka, Department of Archaeology. We have in Kerala, Department of Archaeology. We have in Tamil Nadu, Department of Archaeology. So we have a number of departments, and here you can see the images of these departments. So many of you who are from these states can correlate with respect to these important institutions. And it is very important for you that whenever you go to your interview and you are from the state and have history as a major subject of interest, then definitely questions may be asked with respect to these departments. So we have the image of the Karnataka Department of Archaeology, the Kerala State Archaeological Department, the Tamil Nadu Archaeological Department, which was established in 1961. Another society with its roots in the British era is the Asiatic Society of Bengal. When the British came to India, they came with a mindset to rule over India as long as possible and in every way, because they understood that India was land of infinite opportunity for them to exploit in every way. And one of the school or one of the class of British officials who wanted to rule over India, they came out with the mindset that to rule India better, we should know India better. So it is not that they had a genuine interest to uncover, to read about India, but they wanted to have an understanding of Indian society, Indian culture, Indian religion, so that they can effectively administer India. And these class of intellectuals were known as Orientalists. They were known as Orientalists who made efforts towards the study of ancient Indian textbooks, mainly the Brahmanical texts, and to understand Indian religion, social customs. We have example of a number of Orientalists such as Warren Hastings, who in his individual capacity, because Warren Hastings, who was the Governor General of Bengal, he prodded the East India Company to establish institutions, but when there was no response, he in his individual capacity started the Calcutta Madrasa. Then we have Jonathan Duncan, we have James Princip, we have William Jones, Charles Wilkins. So many of these Orientalists not only studied, but they also translated many of the Brahmanical texts in English. For example, Max Muller, whom we associate with the Aryan theory, had never visited India. But Max Muller was so interested in studying the Rig Vedic texts that actually he could talk a lot about India based on the interpretation of these texts. Then we have Charles Wilkins, who had translated Bhagavad Gita. So we find that due to the efforts of these individuals, society was established in 1784, and mainly the effort was of William Jones. William Jones had played a very important role. These Orientalists who also emphasized the idea that in the ancient past, all the Europeans and the Indians, they had a common ancestor. Possibly this was somewhere in the steppes from where they migrated or branched off to the west and also to the east. Asiatic Society of Bengal was established to study Sanskrit and it published a journal known as Asiatic Researches. It was also interested in deciphering in studying the ancient inscriptions, such as James Prinsep is credited to not only decipher the Brahmi script, but he was the person who gave or who found out about the glory of Ashok. So he studied a number of Ashokan inscriptions in which Ashok was referred to as Devanam Piyadashi or the beloved of the god. And nobody knew that who was this Devanam Piyadashi. It is only when in one of the inscriptions at Maski, where the name Ashok Raja was also mentioned alongside Devanam Piyadashi, that James Prinsep was able to correlate and was able to weave a story of the glory of Ashoka. We find that Charles Wilkins, he had published the English translation of Bhagavad Gita in 1785. So this organization, which was established in 1784 by William Jones and a number of other Orientalists, it made a systematic effort to study India's history by studying mainly the inscriptions and the ancient Sanskrit texts.